Of the quadratic formula. Does anybody think they just kind of flat out know it? Like you remember it from last week from previous classes? Anybody feel that way? I'll even start you off. X equals. You guys know how it goes? Hey. That's Pop Goes the Weasel. So, Coy, did you hear the song? Did you hear Kyrie singing it? Yeah. Yeah, so you can sing the Pop Goes the Weasel song. You can just memorize it. You can sing one of like 50,000 different versions of a song on YouTube of the quadratic formula. No joke, there's tons of them. 50,000 might be a bit of a stretch, but there's a lot of them. However, one way or the other, when you see solve using the quadratic formula, you need to know that. And we'll practice that all week. So hopefully that'll really help you as we round out the week. You'll get better and better. Make sense? Now the question is, where on earth do these things come from? The B, the A, and the C. From a quadratic equation. And what would that quadratic equation look like? No. Plus bx plus c equals 0. So this, my friends, is an incredibly important place to start. Because if you don't know where you're starting, it's kind of hard to know where to go. Right? So if you were blindfolded and you didn't know where you were and somebody said, I need you to get to your house, and you had no idea where you were, you wouldn't know where to go. Right? But if somebody gave you a GPS location or you knew where you were, then you'd know where to go, right? So if we don't start off kind of in our standard form, our home base, a place that we're familiar with, it's going to be a real struggle to know where to go, right? So if you were to see something like this, I don't know, I'll just make something up. If you were to see 3x squared equals 7 minus 8x, is that standard form? And because it's not, we really don't know what the A, the B, and the C are yet. How could I get that to standard form? Yeah, so it'd be 3x squared minus 7 plus 8x. But that's even in the wrong order, isn't it? It needs to be in descending order. Yes, we need to get it to the right order. So it'd be 3x squared plus 8x minus 7 equals 0. So I don't know what you would have said for the A and the B and the C for the first thing that I wrote up there. But now, isn't it pretty obvious that A is 3? 8 is B. Negative 7 is C. And so it's really important that in order for us to identify the A, the B, and the C, remember what this is a formula, right? This is a formula, just like a recipe. So if I told you, hey, there's a recipe for you to make an apple pie, and you're going to need cinnamon, and you don't have a clue what cinnamon is, we have a problem. So just like this, if we have this lovely quadratic formula, but you don't know what B is, we have a problem, right? The only way to know what B is to be in standard form. Once you get there, you guys have proven to be very, very good at evaluation. I think you've got a good chance to have success. Make sense? So, do you see how number 1, the equation there, is not written in standard form? See if you can get it to standard form, and then use the quadratic formula to try to solve. Calculator active for sure. I want you to try to approximate your answers down to the nearest tenth. I will catch up with you here in a couple of minutes once you guys give number 1 a try. Number 1, did y'all notice, again, just a reminder that as that equation is currently written, it is not in standard form. So it's not in a good form for the quadratic formula to be used. What would I need to do to get it to that form that would be better, Joe?
Add the 2 to both sides.
That's right. So if I do that, I get 5x squared minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. So that equals 0 is quite important. We don't want. I know sometimes when we get equals 0, we think that the equal sign maybe just goes away. It certainly does not. Equals 0 is very important. So once you've done that, you should be able to identify your A, B, and your C. So what is the 2? Is that A, B, or C? C. C is 2. How about the 5? What is the 5? That's the A. And What is the b? Negative, right? Negative 7 because the sign in front of the number is part of the number. So negative 7. So I'll put A is 5, B is negative 7, C is positive 2. And like I said, the quadratic formula is simply a recipe. And as long as we know how to do order of operations, we should be able to make this recipe work pretty well. So here we go. X equals negative B. So that would be negative of negative 7, or negative 7, which will be positive 7 in the end, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so that would be negative 7 squared, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2A. So at this point, all I've done is I have, and I don't know, you guys have probably picked up on this, but did you notice the only thing I'm really doing here is the same thing we did last August? If I'm going to evaluate, I remove the variable, I put an empty set of parentheses, and I drop the appropriate number in that empty set of parentheses. Does that make sense? Doing the same thing we did last August and ever since. Okay, so from here on out, it's about PEMDAS. Let's see how this goes. You probably just immediately said x equals positive 7 plus or minus. Inside here would be 49 minus 40 as you go 4 times 5 times 2. All over 10. I still have work to do inside the radical, inside the grouping symbol there. So I would write x is equal to 7 plus or minus square root of 9 over 10. And then, interestingly enough, square root of 9. We know this, don't we? 3. So it would be x equals 7 plus or minus 3 over 10. It's going to work out nicely. We can keep going with this, can't we? Because 3 turned out pretty nice. So I would go 7 plus 3 over 10 or 7 minus 3 over 10. So 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 over 10 is 1. 7 minus 3 is 4. 4 over 10 is really 2/5. So I would say positive 1 would be one of our answers. X equals 2/5 would be our other answer. Okay, so how's this going? Questions? Listen, I threw this at you knowing that some of the details might be easy, might be difficult. I didn't know. Let's try another one. Check out number 2. Be our final practice for the day. Number 2. Tomorrow I'm planning on being at the board with these, going to the board, so keep at it. Notice it's not in standard form. Before you do anything, put it in standard form. So, listen up, please. This certainly be worth considering. Notice it says solve using the quadratic formula. So I'm thinking that once you identify that, it might be worth your while to write the quadratic formula down, just to make sure that you are starting off in a good spot. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus
The square root of b squared
minus
4ac all over 2.
2a. Guys, in the back, please. Hey, I hope you're doing well with this. We're going to write this down again tomorrow and the next day and days after that as well. So hopefully you'll get really, really good at this. But you'd want to start there. Keep in mind, of course, that this is based on standard form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And here's where there might be a little bit of debate, and it would be healthy debate, and it would be okay either way. When you look at this quadratic equation up here, is that currently in standard form? No. It is not. So I think you have options as far as what you would do. How many of you, when you try to put it in standard form, you just added 4x squared over to the right side? Anybody do it that way? Add the 4x squared over? How many of you added 10x and added 3? Okay. You know what? It makes absolutely no difference which way you go. It really doesn't. Because the majority of you added the 10x and the 3 over to the left, I'll go that route. For those that went a little different route, there's going to be some steps in the middle where some things might look a little bit different, but very quickly we should agree. Okay? So let's see how this goes. If I were to add those over, I would get negative 4x squared plus 10x plus 3 is equal to 0. Can you clearly see your A, B, and C here?
Yep.
Okay, so here we go. Here's the quadratic formula. X equals negative 10 plus or minus. Folks in the back, please. That are just chatting, stop. B squared minus 4 times A times C. I'm doing is I'm plugging things in where they go. Not overcomplicating it, not trying to do too much. All over 2A. So I get there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So then do a little bit of PEMDAS work here. It'd be negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 100. A negative times a negative is a positive, right? So 4 times 4 times 3 would be 48. So it'd be plus 48. All divided by negative 8. And I think at this point, this is where I would more or less wrap up and turn to the calculator. Get 148 right there. Still got that negative 8 down there. The reason why I would say this is about where I'd wrap this up is because it says up here, round or approximate your answers to the nearest tenth. This is a big hint that I can use the calculator to finish this, right? Make sense? Yes. So let me show you what I would do with the calculator. When I switch screens here, the stuff that I've written on the left side is going to go away, but you've got it on your papers perhaps. So check this out. I've got negative 10 plus or minus root 148 over negative 8. So I'm going to go with my calculator. Just come right over here and I'm going to go parentheses, negative 8 plus the square root of 148, close the parentheses, divided by negative 8. Isn't that half my answer?
Yeah.
Negative 8 plus the square root of 148 over negative 8. I hit enter. Did you guys get negative 0.52 approximately for one of your answers? No? Oh, you didn't finish it. Okay.
I got wrong with that.
And then the other one would be negative 8 minus.
It's negative 10.
Oh, is it negative 10? Sorry, I'm going on memory here. Let's try that again. So it's negative 10 plus or minus root 148 over negative 8?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, sorry. Negative 10 plus root. There was a bunch of 8s floating around, and I put one in the place where it shouldn't have been. How about this? That look better? Negative 10 plus root 148 over negative 8. So I got negative 0.27, roughly. Okay. Now that we got our 10 straightened out, we're all happy. Negative 10 minus root 148, all divided by negative 8. Look good? I got 2.77, 2.8 approximately. So to sum this up, what it would look like is my last line was x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 148 over negative 8. I was smart with my parentheses and how all that worked. So from here, I could essentially say I turned to the calculator and I got x equals, I guess it'd be negative 0.3 if we round to the nearest tenth, or 2.8 if I round to the nearest tenth. And that'd be how I'd finish. Questions? I can't remember if it was this class or the other class, but there certainly were, when they saw this, maybe this was you guys, when they saw this part, they said, wait a minute, haven't we done that a bunch this year already? Have you noticed, like in your WebAssigns and some of the DMRs that we've done, like the evaluation was square root of b squared minus 4ac? we try to get you ready for this all year, and I think that's why you're probably good at it, because you've been practicing it a lot, right? You've been putting in the effort. And even some of them, we had almost the whole quadratic formula, just instead of a plus or minus, it was just like a plus. So please have confidence. You've seen this and done this a lot. It's just you didn't know maybe exactly what it was for at the time, but you've practiced the mechanics of this a lot. So hopefully that's going to pay off for you. Okay, so any questions or anything like that? All right, so tomorrow we're going to keep practicing the quadratic formula and hopefully get even better than you are right now. We'll be at the board a little bit too. So anyways, if I could have Anna and Irene head on out.